So in previous videos, I've cautioned against using ChatGPT to generate new content, especially longer form content. But if you want to look at generating new content, the best way to do that is to both structure it around existing examples of good work that someone's already done, hopefully you've already done, and then giving it really specific commands and parameters about what you're looking for. You've got a long 10-page document and you want to summarize it in sections. You've written it, but you want to make some summaries. So you take this content you've already written, and the first thing you can do is, say, put in 3 paragraphs and say, ChatGPT, summarize each paragraph in 1 sentence, or pull the key messages out of this. That's okay because it's giving it some general information, but you don't know that it's going to summarize exactly what is most meaningful to you or another human. It's going to pull out what it kind of can find out are the key themes, but those aren't necessarily going to be the ones that you're looking for. So you can ask it to summarize information and it'll do its best. You can see what that looks like. It's fun to test that and play with it and see what it generates and see how useful it is, because it can be useful for summarizing documents. But what's even better is to give it some specific examples of what you want it to do. So first, let's say you have a paragraph or 2 paragraphs, you summarize it. So what you do is you give it a few examples, and what you have, it's a bit more work, but it'll lead to better results if you take 2 paragraphs at a time from this document and then you summarize them. And you create the absolute best summary of the key information in the style that you want. And you say, ChatGPT, here's the content, here's an example of content, and here's a great summary of it. You can do it once, you can do it twice, you can do it 3 times. The more information and the more good information you give it, both in original content and then output, the better it's going to do. So you can say, it's kind of training it. You can only train it in a limited sense, in a limited environment in one of your little chat windows, but you can train it a bit. And because it's a language model, it's good at converting one section of text to another section of text. So take some of your work and say, okay, here's what we want in a summary. Let's say you're making an executive summary of a document. Say, okay, here's a summary of this section. Here's what the document is. Here's what I want the output section to look like that I put together. It's 2 sentences. It's great. Do that a couple times and then say, okay, now take these next sections and you generate a summary of this document based on the previous summaries, and have a couple separate documents going so you know what's ChatGPT generated content, what's your own content, so you can separate that and use it effectively. But the more examples and parameters you can give it, the more effective it's going to be at giving you what you want. And also the fewer errors it will make, because the fewer parameters it has, the more, I don't want to use the word creative it'll be, because it's not creative, but the more likely it is to go off the rails. So it's really good to test this kind of stuff with really good examples of work that you want to create. And if you want it to be an AI assistant, you have to give it some instruction, right? The advantage of this, of ChatGPT or Google Bard or Microsoft Bing's AI chatbot or whatever, is that it uses natural language, so you can kind of speak to it in text. The problem is you don't necessarily know what's going on behind the algorithms, because it's called OpenAI, nothing about it, or the source code is open. So you kind of have to work backwards, reverse engineer it a bit, see what works and see what doesn't. And be cautious about generating new text, but if you're giving it really specific rules and parameters, like any computer program, it's going to be better at doing what you want. So that's a really useful thing that might be good in your work, especially if you have to process a lot of information, summarize content, pull out key themes and ideas. It can be a good way of doing that, and you can train it a bit on your own work. Now be careful, because you may not want to be replaced in that way. But you may be able to train the algorithm and teach yourself a bit about how to make some of your work a bit easier.